I heard Morgan Freeman say something the other day. They asked him, he said something to this effect. He said, this is Black American Month. How do you feel about it? And he said, well, first of all, I'm black every day of the year, not just 1 month. And I thought, that's exactly right. We are Native every day.
Hello, I'm Emmy DeGrappa. Each week, we bring you stories asking our guests the question, why? We learn about their passion, why they do what they do, why should we care, and what can we learn? What better place to explore the human landscape than from the state known for its incredible landscapes, Wyoming? And what better organization than Wyoming Humanities? Serving our state for over 45 years, we share stories, ideas, and wisdom about the human experience. This is What's Your Why? Today, we are talking to Scotty Ratliff. He is a member of the Eastern Shoshone tribe. He is a father and a grandfather. He's an author, and he is also an aide to U.S. Senator Mike Enzi. Welcome, Scotty.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you for being here. Where did you grow up?
I grew up on the Wind River Reservation. I was born in Fort Washakie. My family had a ranch north of Pavilion. I spent the first 18 years of my life there. Then I did college and failed out at that. Went to the Army and wasn't real successful there either. And came back and went to college. And
what did you get your degree in?
I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a master's degree in guidance and counseling.
And what kind of counseling?
Guidance and counseling.
Oh, okay. Did you work on the reservation with young people?
I worked for 1 year at the Riverton High School. I was an Indian counselor. And then I worked for a year. I was in charge of Indian Ed for the state of Wyoming. And then for the next 25 years, I worked for Central Wyoming College as a counselor and ultimately an administrator.
And what do you think are the biggest challenges in education for Native Americans?
I think there's a couple of things. I think it's a big picture that you have to understand. In order to be successful in college, I think you have to have a good support system. I think you have to have a system that you develop, like study skills and motivation, and all of that ties together in order to be successful in college. So if you get to college and you're not prepared, it doesn't have much to do with IQ. I mean, I think over the course of the years, I've seen plenty smart Native students who didn't succeed because they didn't have the study skills. They didn't have something that said, I have to go to school every single day. I cannot miss a day. Most kids, Native or not, that go to school every day ultimately end up succeeding. It's just the rare kid that can come in, take a test, and go along. So I think those things are big. I think the other thing is, like in today's society, if you don't have access to the internet, if you don't have, a computer at home that you can do your homework and studies, you're a bit handicapped. I mean, obviously you can go down to the library, except there's not a library on reservations, so you can't go there. And so most communities where you live in town have those kinds of conveniences for you, but not on the reservation. So those are just a few of the things that I think cripple those students a little bit.
When people ask you what is life like growing up on the reservation, how do you describe that?
Well, I can only describe my life. In my life probably wasn't as typical as many. As I mentioned, I grew up on a ranch, so my nearest neighbor was 12 miles away. We had running water, but it was horrible water. And so we had to go to town about once every 2 weeks and get drinking water. We had a big cistern that we poured that into, and then you had to pump it out. And then we didn't have electricity. If the wind blew, we had a windmill and some batteries, so we could charge up the batteries and you could have it. But you didn't ever get to turn the light on because you're scared. You didn't have electricity and you didn't have light, and you didn't get to turn TV on because A, we didn't have TV, and B, we didn't have electricity. So a lot of things that we didn't have was different, not so much different from other Indian students, it was just different from today's student. The other thing that I had, and I think it's been a really important part of my life, and I've tried to keep part of that alive, is the horse. As you're probably well aware, the Shoshone were known for their horsemanship. I mean, we're just always have been, the people that they look to because we're just great horsemen. And I grew up horseback. My family relied on horses to ranch, but I think there was also always something there that's sort of where we got our medicine from. That's where we got we call it medicine, but that special power that you get from being around something good. And so that's something that I was lucky enough to grow up with. I think when I grew up, every Indian kid I knew rode a horse. I mean, all day long. All summer long, you'd see kids loping up and down next to the highway and playing games on horses. You don't see that today. It's not they're just not a part of their world, and I think that's too bad. I think that's a void. There are some people that are doing a lot to try to get it back into the Native world, and I help when I can. I believe in it.
What was your journey into college and then dropping out of college, but then returning and then ultimately working for Senator Mike Enzi? My journey in college was I just got scolded. My journey in college was interesting because I went from, there were 13 kids in my graduating class. And I went from there to the University of Wyoming, where there was at the time, I think, about 5,500 to 6,000 students. I'd never seen that many people in my whole life. And, there was just so many pretty women and fast cars and good times to be had. And I wanted to play in that game. So the first semester I didn't pass any classes. And the second semester I passed one class and dropped out. Then I went to work. I worked in oil fields for a little bit, saved up a little money, went back to college, but still lacked the discipline that I really needed to just do things right. I did better in school, but certainly wasn't headed for a degree right away. So I dropped out again, and along came the Vietnam War. I got drafted. And so in 1966, I went to, it was 1967 that I actually went to Vietnam. While I was there, I lost my right arm. And so I had some real soul searching to do, because by the time I came home, I had 3 children. And so I had the responsibility of taking care of them. And a lot of the labor jobs that I had been doing right before I went, primarily in oil field business, but some in the ranching, really wasn't a very good option anymore. I had to find a job where I could use my mind and not just rely on physical. And so I went back to college. I'd been in the hospital in Denver for a year and had moved my family down there. So I went on and got a 2-year degree in business at a little college in Denver called Arapahoe Community College. And then from there I went to Black Hills in Spearfish, got an elementary ed, taught 2 years on the Rosebud Reservation, and then went to University of Wyoming, got my master's degree in guidance and counseling. And I've heard a common thing from talking to Native Americans that a lot of them, even if they leave to go to college, they really want to return to the reservation. Yeah. Well, most of us want to return to our family. I mean, my mom is 97. She lives alone. She has never lived out of Fremont County. In 97 years, she's never lived in any other town except, Pavilion and Riverton. That was true of her, one of her sisters and her brother. And so I tell you that because
I think for so many of us, our families are there, so that's why we want to return. And then I think there's another thing. My whole life since I came back has hinged around trying to help other natives. My time at the college, I was always involved with the Indian Club and, the Indian counseling and just trying to make things better. I don't know if I mentioned, but I was a legislator for 12 years. In fact, I was the first Native to ever be elected in Wyoming. And that was a wonderful experience. I met some really, really, really nice people that are my friends today. People like Clarine Law. I served with her and John Turner, some H.L. Jensen. Some of these guys from Jackson were good friends. So.
Wow, that's excellent. And congratulations on being the first Native American to serve in our legislature. That's amazing and I'm sure much needed. And I wish we saw more of that.
Yeah, it's interesting, this election. I got a flyer the other day from a friend of mine over in South Dakota, a girl that I'd went to college with. She's probably in her late 60s, and she's running for the legislature. And she sent me a flyer, and I think there were 12 natives from South Dakota running for some office there, which is really saying something. We have 2 in Fremont County or on the reservation that are running this time. So we have a county commissioner that's a native. So it's
changing, and it's good.
It is changing, yeah, and it is good. That's right.
What do you think about holding on to your culture, that you want young people to understand that just because you go off and get an education doesn't mean you lose who you are as a Native American? Well,
I heard Morgan Freeman say something the other day. They asked him, he said something to this effect. He said, this is Black American Month. How do you feel about it? And he said, well, first of all, I'm black every day of the year, not just one month. And I thought, that's exactly right. We are Native every day. And when we talk about holding on to the culture, I think what I've tried to do when I was in legislature, I currently sit on the State Board of Education and have been a big part, I think, of finally getting this Indian Ed for All passed. I worked with the Humanities Council, and we're doing several things that are Native related. Central Wyoming College has taken a real active role in promoting Indian Ed for All. And you're seeing it in a lot of schools where they're saying, we want to know more about the Native. The Native community has said for a long, long time that we can solve a lot of problems if we can remove some of the ignorance and fears that lay out there. We learn about the non-Indian 12 years in a row, first through 12. We're always studying something about the European and American part of things. But why would it be unfair to learn a little bit about the rest of the country? Because it is a whole. It's not just one thing or another. And I look at some of the things that's gone on in this country just recently. What a shame that we're fighting each other because of our nationality or because of our religion. I mean, it's just, to me, it's pitiful. And I think the best way of solving that is allowing people to understand us. We don't have to look the same in order to respect each other. And so I think it's even very important for the Native students themselves to have this chance to learn about themselves. I remember I think it was the 7th grade, I had a history teacher that loved history, and we got to spend about a week on Custer's Last Stand. And he knew the whole thing. He knew who was the general doing this and how they strategized the battle. I remember that as though it was the most exciting thing I ever learned. And I'm thinking, for that week, I really soared. I thought, boy, they're talking about good stuff that I really want to know. And, I don't know how the rest of the kids in the class felt, but for that one week, it was wonderful for me. So I'm just excited that we're as a state really moving forward with doing some of these things and sharing both sides of the coin.
Absolutely, and it's about time. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Your Why, a production of Think Why, Wyoming Humanities. This has been executive producer Emmy DeGrappa. Please subscribe and never miss a show. For more information, go to thinkwhy.org.